I used to think humility meant disappearing, shrinking my voice, apologizing for my needs, pretending not to feel what I felt. Or worse, convincing myself I didn't feel it at all. I thought humility was the virtue of silence, the spiritual mask of invisibility, the holy reward for not being a burden. But that wasn't humility. That was survival. And like a lot of us, I confused the two for years, because when your nervous system learns to fawn, to appease, to freeze, or collapse, just to stay safe in the world, it makes sense that obedience starts to feel holy, even when it's actually fear. I learned that early, not through sermons, but through silence. Silence in a small apartment with a father too tired to talk. And later, a stepmother whose presence taught me that staying quiet meant staying unharmed. I slept beside my dad until I was 14, shared a room with the only adult I had. And somewhere in that tight, quiet space, I started believing that being good meant being invisible. I excelled in school, had perfect attendance, didn't drink water after 7 because it made me need to pee in the night. And that would have been disruptive. I wasn't humble. I was desperate. Desperate not to be the reason someone else broke down. Desperate not to need anything that might make someone love me less. That desperation, it looked like discipline to outsiders. But inside, it was a scared little boy, managing the emotional weather of a house where love felt conditional and survival meant performance. I carried that into my teens, and like clockwork, it cracked. I started drinking at 14 and blacking out by 15 because alcohol, for a minute, let me stop performing. It let me rage, cry, say what I actually felt until the morning after, when I'd hate myself for all of it. That's the thing about shame. It doesn't just make you hide. It makes you hurt yourself, then blame yourself for hurting. I tried to climb out by being perfect again. A West Point nomination. One shot at doing something worthy. Something that would prove I mattered, but my eyes weren't good enough. Years of reading under the covers. Books as my only escape had damaged the very thing that could have gotten me out. When that fell through, I had no second plan. So I went to a state school and fell apart. No structure, no supervision, just chaos disguised as freedom. I drank, I skipped, I numbed every feeling that ever tried to surface. And I still didn't call it shame, because shame doesn't always scream. It whispers, you're too much and not enough all at once. And when you believe that humiliation starts to feel like holiness, I thought God wanted my silence, my sacrifice, my self-erasure. But what God actually wanted was my honesty. The turning point wasn't a church altar or a powerful sermon. It was a hospital bed and a shattered ulna. I had been beaten, left with metal in my arm, and a new kind of silence inside me. This one wasn't survival. It was surrender, because sometimes it takes your body breaking for your soul to finally speak. I started to hear the truth, not in the voice of a preacher, but in the whisper I'd buried for years. That God never asked me to disappear. He asked me to come alive. But to do that, I had to face the difference between humility and humiliation. Humility is rooted in truth. It's the willingness to see yourself clearly, not inflated, not erased. It's the capacity to be seen fully, without armor. Philippians 2 says that Jesus, though being in very nature, God, did not consider equality with God something to cling to, but emptied himself, not into nothing, but into love. The Greek word there, kenu, means to pour out, not to vanish, not to lose value, but to make space for something sacred. That's humility. Not pretending you're worthless, but letting go of the performance that tried to prove you weren't. When I worked as a firefighter, I was still performing. 90-hour weeks, lifting bodies, saving strangers, and still dying inside. My autoimmune disease flared, my soul burned out, and I still didn't stop, because my identity was tied to exhaustion, to being needed, to proving I was good. It took near organ failure to admit the truth that I didn't know who I was, without my pain, without my usefulness, without my mask. And that's when healing began. Not because I tried harder, but because I finally let go. I fasted. I prayed. Not to earn favor, but to clear the noise. And in that quiet, I heard the voice I'd buried for decades. You are mine. You are loved. You are not a mistake. Not even when you collapse. Not even when you hide. Not even when you drink or disappear or run. Real humility was believing that even when I felt like nothing, I was still chosen. Even when I had nothing to give, I was still worth holding. I don't need to perform anymore. Not for love, not for approval, not even for God. Because God doesn't love the mask, He loves the soul beneath it. So if you're still carrying the weight of 1,000 quiet humiliations, the ones you've mistaken for holiness, for humility, for faith, you can put them down. You can stop disappearing and start becoming. Because humility is not about shrinking, it's about standing honest in the light of a God who sees you fully and never turns away. If this met you somewhere real, stay close. There's more where this came from. And if this met you somewhere real, don't rush to the next thing. Let it breathe. Let your body stay soft. Let the weight fall off your shoulders without needing to explain why. Let the silence afterward feel safe, not empty. And when you're ready, if you feel led, leave something behind in the comments. Not to be wise, not to be profound, just to be real. A sentence, a memory, a thread of the old story you're finally setting down. Because someone else is scrolling right now, looking for a reason to stay. And maybe your line becomes their lifeline. We're not here to perform faith. We're here to practice coming home. So don't underestimate what your voice might mean, even if it shakes, even if it's just a whisper, even if all you write is, "I'm still here," because you are. And sometimes that's the bravest thing a soul can say.